Okay, so welcome everybody today. I'm really excited to bring you Mariam today. She is an amazing lawyer and she is a mompreneur herself and is going to give us a lot of advice on how to launch our business the right way. So many of you ladies are just starting out and it's such an exciting time, but overwhelming time for you guys as well. And my job is to help you with every step of that. And us creative entrepreneurs stink at that whole left brain side. So Mariam is here to help us today conquer that part of it. So hi, Mariam, how are you?
Hi, Michelle. Good, thank you. How are you?
I am fabulous and super excited to have you here today. And
Likewise.
I want my audience to get to know you first because I just love chatting with other women business owners. We all have our own unique story, and I think that my audience would love hearing yours.
Oh, sure. Well, first, thanks for having me. I'm super excited to be here and to offer any, information and knowledge that I have, hopefully help anyone out. As Michelle already introduced, my name is Mariam, and I am a licensed attorney in California, but practice federal law throughout the United States. I am a mompreneur. I'm a blogger. And the way that came into being was about roughly a year ago. My husband and I sat down and we had to make a decision because we have almost a 3-year-old at this point, and we couldn't find a babysitter for him, like somebody we could trust him with.
Mm-hmm.
So it was either, I take my son to work every day with me, which I've tried for 3 weeks, and all I've done was babysitting instead of work, or I stay home and I raise him until we're able to move back to California because that's where we're originally from. So we have help there. So yeah, I closed my law office and became a stay-at-home mom.
Gotcha.
And then blogging was born. It's like, I love my kid to death. Like, he is my everything in this world, but I am going crazy. Like, I need to do something.
Motherhood is this exciting time, and we have this just like want to be there for our kids, but we also like, I struggle with this personally all the time, is I don't want to lose who I am amongst motherhood either. Like, I feel having 2 boys, it's important to show them a strong, independent woman at the same time.
Definitely.
And so I totally understand where you're coming from. Like, I think you're probably a better mom because you have your own business going on.
I'm hoping that's the case.
I bet it is.
My reasons for starting this were a little bit more on the selfish side because I've never been home in my life before. Like, I have worked every single day pretty much for as long as I can remember, as long as I've been able to work, let's just put it that way. And it was a new and rough experience just being home and not doing anything like work-wise. Obviously, my son is a lot of work.
Of course.
Overactive toddler, but that's like, I spoke to my husband. I'm like, I need to do something. Like, I need something to occupy my mind that I know, like, I have this thing that I'm doing. I don't care what it is. Even if I don't make money from it, like, I don't care. I just want to do something. So that's how it all started.
I bet a lot of my audience feels the exact same thing.
It gets better.
Well, of course, as they get older, it gets easier and everything too. But so, I mean, you closed your law firm and you got into blogging, but now you're kind of back in the world of law. So how has this now ventured back into this kind of aspect of, setting businesses up the right way and helping really people understand what you legally need to do?
Sure. So I'm technically a blogger still. Yes, like now I've refocused my niche. Instead of like talking about, let's say, how to start a blog or how to build your email list, now I refocused on something that I actually have like expertise in, and that's the legal field. But my basically purpose is to help out other, mompreneurs or other work at home people who want to do something, but might not necessarily have a lot of funds, the money to go out there and hire a lawyer and pay like their hourly fee. Because if I was doing this in, the office environment, what I'm doing basically now and helping people out, I mean, it's like 250 to 350 an hour.
Right, exactly.
Who's going to pay me that from bloggers? But this allows me the kind of creative freedom that I need. I'm home, I'm with my son, and at the same time I'm blogging and offering like information, technically not advice, because full disclaimer, I am an attorney, but I'm not your attorney. So it's just fun and it's rewarding because I get to help out other people who are in my position. To do something with their businesses, or to make sure that at least their business that they created and labored over like for so many nights, at least they don't get in trouble for something that they have overlooked in the legal department.
Right. I know, because, as solo entrepreneurs, we're juggling so much, and it is easy for those non-sexy things in our businesses that we want to try and just push off to the side. Right. So, the photographers all understand. We all have this like shiny object syndrome that when you see a cute prop or something else, like, ooh, instead of, let's get our policies and our contracts in place, So today I really want to specifically talk to my audience that's more so starting off and help guide them through setting their business up right legally from the start.
Sure.
So can you give us some insight on that?
Of course. So there are like different business types to begin with. And for photographers, I'm assuming you're not going to be strictly online. Obviously, you have clients, you take
all
photos,
brick and mortar,
brick and mortar stores. So the way you go about that is slightly different from your average like online creative, because you have like new things to worry about. Well, first of all, you have a location, right? And you'll want to make sure that you do everything about that correctly to not lose your location. Always pay attention to your lease agreement or purchase agreement if you're buying your space. Make sure that all the necessary policies are there, all the necessary terms are there. You don't want, let's say, the landowner to be able to kick you out like for nothing. You want there to be specific reasons, specific grounds, like how long you can stay there, when the landowner is allowed to come on your property, if you require notice or not, all these little like fine prints that you might not necessarily think about when signing a contract. I would urge you to actually read carefully and make sure you know what you're agreeing to.
Sure.
Any contract out there, like regardless what it is, like even the expensive corporate contracts out there, you have an opportunity to rework and edit. Like if there's something that you don't like, you can always talk it out and make corrections to that or make changes to that is agreeable for both you and the other party.
Sure.
So I would say that's the biggest tip out there.
Okay. Now my audience, so we have 3 different types of studios that typically a photographer would have. It would either be physical on location that they would be renting or they bought. It would be, the next one would be an in-home studio. So they would be having clients coming into their home and having a designated area for a studio within there. And then the third is actually going to their clients' homes for the photo shoot. So in terms of when these photographers are actually going to their clients' homes, is there anything else, because they obviously don't have a lease or, a deed or anything like that contract-wise for the space, is there anything else that they would need legally to be able to cover themselves?
Well, in that case, then the contract would be immediately with the customer. And also keep in mind, when you're a photographer, you take photos. That's your thing. That's your value, right? So let's say you go to somebody else's house, like you pose them in a certain way, you arrange them, you're ready to take photos, and then there's this person from the side comes and starts like taking photos with their iPhone, that of a set that you just set up on, let's say, the person, that's not okay. Because part of your value as a photographer is knowing how to set everything up, is knowing how to pose people. And I'm not a photographer by any means whatsoever. I actually am horrible at it, but I even know that much, right? you want to have contracts in place with the customer, not just release contract or, rights contract, but, in whatever contract you sign with them, you also want to have some kind of a term there that says, nobody else like is allowed access
no personal
to this area, while we're working, whether it's a family member, like they are not allowed to take photos with like their phones and whatnot, as as tempted as they might get because you look gorgeous and they want to remember you, like it's not allowed. So that is something you should take into consideration when going to other people's houses.
Okay. So then even backing up a little bit further, before they're actually even photographing yet, and they're just wanting to register as a legit business. Like here in the US, I do have some audience members that are outside of the US, but talking US strictly only, what kind of pieces do they need to have in place to actually have a running legal business?
So, in US, unfortunately, it's a little difficult to answer that question very specifically because we have states. Each state has its own rules and regulations, and requirements. So there's no one size fits all approach when it comes to creating your business. Like if you need specific, like actual specific advice as to like what you personally need to do, then I would say the best thing to do would be to consult an attorney in your area. However, there are some generalities that no matter where you're at, you should think about satisfying. So one of the very first ones, regardless whether you're a brick or mortar store or whether you work out of your house or you go to somebody else's house, you're gonna need to have, you're gonna need to apply to a tax ID, like the federal tax ID, the EIN. And it's an online process. It takes like 5 to 10 minutes. It's not a difficult process. It's free. You just apply, fill out a few relevant information about yourself and your business, and you get that number. So that number is very important for your tax purposes. And as a business, you want to have that. The other one would be to decide what kind of business structure do you want to have? Like, do you want to be a sole proprietor? Do you want to be a limited liability company like an LLC? Or do you want to be a corporation? And the way you would come to that decision is by kind of taking into account like how much liability your personal like business has. Let's say if you're a photographer, like how high is the risk of liability in a photography business? How likely are you to be sued? If it's pretty common occurrence, then you most likely want to opt in to have a business either as structured as a LLC or a corporation. Because that's going to offer you that limited liability where you individually as the business owner is separate from the business. So if your business gets sued, at least you personally and your like personal finances and savings, assets don't get touched because of your business getting sued.
And the photographers that I'm working with, we all are niching specifically in maternity and newborn photography. So we are dealing with those, like babies for us have to be 2 weeks old or younger for their portraits. So there's definitely liability stuff going on there.
I could see how that would be somewhat of a higher risk area. So knowing that, I would probably strongly urge, if you're starting out, consider an LLC structure or a corporation structure. If you want to opt in for being a sole proprietor, meaning your identity and your business's identity are one and the same, then highly recommend getting a business like liability insurance. Because if your business gets sued, then everything you have will be affected, and you don't want that to happen.
Yeah, absolutely. I know for me personally, when I first started the business 14 years ago, I started as the sole proprietor. I was more in that kind of wedding realm before. This was years ago, before I even had kids or any of that. And then learned quickly as we got married and had purchased a house and had more assets along with our personal life associated with it, switching the business to the LLC part of it. Now, even though, and this is just my own personal, what we've done is even though I've separated out into the limited liability company, we still have an umbrella policy over our personal assets for that just one other extra layer of like insurance to protect us as well.
Definitely.
Is that something that you see commonly done in like a solo entrepreneur type of like the businesses that we're doing in here with my audience?
So having the liability insurance in place is always a smart idea, regardless of the business structure you're going to have. We'll probably discuss in a little bit, because even if you're a limited liability business structure or a corporation, there's still a way for you to for personal liability, for like certain kind of what should I call it? Formalities, you know, are not met. So as just a good practice, you always want, if you're able to, you always want to have personal liability.
Right, absolutely.
But the problem, not so much a problem, but like the reason that a lot of people don't think about that upfront is because it can cost money, right? And if you're just starting out, chances are you don't have a lot of funds like to spare. So it's kind of like, okay, I'm going to do sole proprietorship, or I'm going to do LLC because I want to be protected. So in the beginning stages, at least if you don't have the money for that insurance policy, just go with an LLC or a corporation, and obviously be super careful, maintain the formalities. But down the line, when you start seeing some returns from your business, I would 100% still get some kind of policy.
Yeah. And what I also meant to say is that I have the LLC for the business. I have business liability and surety. And then we also have the personal umbrella on our assets for our own home and everything else. So it's like double, you know, all of the whole shebang.
Yeah. You're set. You're protected.
Absolutely. And I think I see so many questions in photography Facebook groups about like, okay, what kind of insurance do I actually need to have? And it's a very confusing topic because, you know, when you're speaking to most insurance agents, they like to speak in lingo that is not stuff that we use every single day. So it can be very intimidating. It can be very overwhelming. And I feel like, you know, it's just an area that absolutely should be focused on when you're handling brand new babies, because God forbid if anything happens, it's something that you just need to protect yourself and your family.
Definitely. I mean, it's a high emotion, like packed feel, you know, new babies, hormones, like, definitely protect yourself.
Yeah, definitely. Okay. So then now they've decided between their sole proprietorship, LLC, corporations, what would be your next kind of advice for them?
So, aside from what I want to say, aside from the liability issue, when it comes to deciding on a business structure, there's also the tax question, like to think about. Some people choose to be a sole proprietor because, you know, they just show the income through like a 1099 or something on their personal income tax returns. If you're an LLC, you have a choice to be taxed either as a sole, if you're a single member LLC, and by default, all single member LLCs are considered sole proprietorships for tax purposes, or you can elect to be taxed as a C Corp. Now, each business structure, and I don't want to go into like too much detail because this is not like master business 101 for you to just, you know, for you to know what you have to do before making a decision. I would highly recommend you consult with a small business attorney if you want the specifics, although when it comes to incorporation or forming an LLC, you can probably get away with that one if you do some research online. The filing part is not difficult, but what's even more complicated is the tax issue. So 100% you want to consult an accountant or a CPA to fully understand the tax consequences that each business structure is going to have for you, and whether you're going to be obligated to pay like a yearly amount or a quarterly amount, because some businesses have that. Some states have certain requirements that you have to satisfy. So LLC is a great option, but sometimes they might not be the best option depending on your personal circumstances and abilities. So once you consult an attorney and an accountant, or just an accountant CPA, your next step would be to start worrying about your business licenses. If you were just digital, some states let you get away without having a license, but since you're not, you're dealing with actual customers, you're signing contracts with them, you're selling stuff to them, you're gonna need a business license, from your state or region that allows you to do business in that county or in that city. And you're most likely also going to need some kind of seller permit or service permit. And these vary by different states, and actually not just states, like within the states, like different regions have different requirements. So as far as like the type of selling permits you're going to need, it's going to be highly dependent on your particular location. So probably call your local business chamber or state business site. It's usually like your state name, business.gov or .org. And you can find all the details there.
Okay, great. So now that they have that set up, now, one of the other questions that I see quite often on Facebook groups is these photographers who have been doing portraits so far for free, right? Some have been doing it for friends and family. Others have been approached by other people who have seen the work that they've done for friends and family and are now like asking for their pictures, but these photographers aren't quite charging for them yet. Do you still recommend at this point, before you're actually even taking pictures for people, having that business in place? Or do you, once you actually start receiving payment for your services, that's when you need to have it all in place?
So usually a business is a business when it starts making money.
Okay.
So even if you just make 1 cent, you're a business, and that's when you need to make sure you have everything in place. But let's say you're working on building your portfolio, or a lookbook or something like that. But if you're not charging anything for that, I would still have contracts in place, 100%, release agreements and whatnot with the people you're taking photos of. But if you're not getting any money whatsoever, it's up to you at that point. You don't have to have all the business things taken care of at that moment. You definitely can if you want to, but it's not a requirement. The requirement starts from the second you earn even just 1 cent from your business.
Okay. So definitely have some type of policy, some type of model release, especially if they're planning on using images, right?
Definitely, yes.
And then a contract in place that just is stating like what they'll receive, what they've agreed upon.
Definitely. It doesn't have to be too complicated. You just need to state in very like clear and concise terms what your service includes, exactly what you're going to give them. Let's say how many frames you're going to take, or a ballpark if you don't know the exact amount, how many finished products they're going to get, when the delivery is going to take place, at what point is your responsibility done to this. Like, is it when you take the photos, or is it when you send them maybe the digital file of all the photos you took? Is it after retouching, or is retouching even included in what you're offering? So just make sure to state everything that you're offering, everything that's going to happen. And then, whether it's your intellectual property or if it's the client's, whether you're considered an employee or a contractor or a work for hire. So all of those are legal terms that you kind of need to make sure that you touch on in your contract, because it's going to make a difference as far as who owns the photograph. Is it you as a photographer, or is it the subject of the photograph, right? So those are some important terms that you should think about. And I believe there's an attorney. You told me about that there, and I looked at her site, and it's great. She offers a lot of like nice policies there.
Mm-hmm.
So
The
just
Hog.
get yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Mm-hmm.
So just get your policies from when it comes to photography for someone who's doing that and obviously knows what to include in there, rather than from somebody who might know the general law but might not know the exact specifics that have to do with photography.
Right.
Case in point, me, like I'm a lawyer, I can tell you the general law, I can tell you how to start a business, what you need to do. But as far as the exact things you need to have in your contract that are related to photography, I can do my due diligence, but I'm not a photographer at the end of the day. So I'll probably won't be able to tell you everything that you need in your contract.
Absolutely. Okay. And then you touched upon this, but I want to go into it just a little bit deeper when it comes to the actual like copyrights, who owns them, who actually, these images belong to after you've handed them over to the client. Because, we see this all the time as photographers, and everybody is like grabbing an image off of Google and, without getting or paying for the rights to that.
Oh yeah.
So everybody does. So when it comes to protecting our own work, what's the best way to, now, and this is what, I still don't even know the whole full background behind this. So from my understanding, if you want to actually copyright something, you have to go and document this specific photograph within some government website that it does in fact belong to you. Is that the way that a copyright really works, or no?
No.
Okay.
So copyright is automatic. The copyright protection is automatic. From the moment your work, and the legal term is fixed on a tangible medium, this means like it actually exists. It's not just an idea in your head. From the moment your work is fixed, you have automatic copyright protection. And you can go ahead and put the copyright notice if you want to, that's C, and all rights reserved, and the year, and all of that. So you have that protection. And if anybody copies that photo without your consent, uses it for any reason, whether it's social media, on their website, or in a blog post that you didn't authorize, you didn't give specific consent, you can definitely do something about that. Now, where the thing that you're talking about actually registering your copyright. So registering your copyright with the U.S. Copyright Office is essentially you have a record in a database that you have this copyrighted work. So that creates the record that you have a copyrighted work, but the actual copyright itself is there for you without you doing anything.
Okay.
However, when you need to record it, and oops, sorry about that. Did you hear that?
Yep, we're good.
Okay. I don't know how to turn that off. Those are like my notifications.
I didn't hear it. Don't worry.
When you need to record it with the Copyright Office is if you're pursuing a court action. Right? So usually photographs, most of the time, these get taken online. Your copyright gets infringed online because, as you said, somebody will do like a Google search, like let's say newborn photos, right? They see something, they like it without even thinking twice about whether they're violating somebody's rights or not. They'll take that and they'll use it, let's say, in a blog post or in a video that they're making. So there are a few things you can do about that as the copyright holder. And I do have a very detailed post on this that, if you like, you can link to later for them.
Absolutely.
As you can, first of all, the very first step that you want to do is you don't want to antagonize anybody. It's, it's easier to catch bees with honey rather than vinegar. The saying is very true. You should try that first. So send an email, and you don't have to be super nice, but don't be like super rude initially. Be like, hey, I'm so-and-so. Here is my site. This photograph that you used on this particular URL or in this video. And what you want to do is when you see your work, your product somewhere that shouldn't be there,
Yep.
take a screenshot immediately.
Right. Okay.
Because that person might be able to change the URL later, or they might even take it down or use it in another context. So the moment you see your work somewhere that shouldn't be, the very first step is to take a screenshot, put down the URL to remember exactly what it was. Send them an email, send them a copy of the screenshot, and then send them a picture of the original work that you have. Like, here is my work. This is protected by copyright. My website has a copyright notice. So you're basically on notice that I have copyright for this. And you have used this exact same photo without asking for my permission in this either post or video and whatnot. That's your first step. So, and then give them a specific time frame to comply. Like usually I'm a fan of like doing 72-hour time frame, you know, take this down within 72 hours. And like actually follow up exactly within 72 hours. If you don't see that they take any action, the next one can be that legal letter. It's called cease and desist letter. And I do have a free cease and desist letter template on my site that you can download and use if you want. I'll put the link later for you. So this letter is a legal letter. Essentially, there's like some legalese in there, you know, my work is protected under this section. It's more of a, hey, like stop what you're doing right now or else type of a letter, right? And you also, this is also the time when you can send an invoice for your work. So if they've used your work and benefited from your work, or, you know, there's obviously some kind of monetary value to your work. So figure out that amount and you can send them an invoice for that. Here is an invoice that you need to pay for unauthorized use that you benefited from by using my work. Getty Images is actually very famous for doing this. Like they send invoices to people all the time, like you've used any one of their images. So there's like a very famous blogger who got sued by Getty Images, not sued, but like, you know, served an invoice that they had to pay. So you can do that. And tell them that you are not going to hesitate, like to take legal action or to file a takedown notice with their servers. Again, give them a time frame to comply, 24 to 72 hours. If they don't, your next step would be to file a takedown notice, right? DCMA. And this is done with the host of that website. So whoever is hosting that website, you contact them directly. Some hosts have a form that you need to fill out. Some hosts will tell you just email us the details, and that usually entails like, you know, your information, copy of your original work, where it can be found, the infringing parties URL where they copied your work without permission. You can even send them a copy of the cease and desist letter that you sent them and the person did not take any action and all of that. And you tell them take down this material or the entire site. So hosts don't want to be non-compliant because they can get in trouble for infringement if they don't comply. So what happens a lot of the time is either the host forces that person to take down the offending or the infringing material, or they'll shut down the entire website altogether.
Okay, great.
So that's your next step. Now, if unfortunately, if the host is located outside of the United States, they don't have to do anything. They can still follow up. But what happens is they ask the person, you know, if they copied it, and the person is obviously going to say, no, I didn't copy this. This is mine. And if they're outside of US, they don't work very hard on that. So they'll just let it go. So your only other option would be to go through a court, right? To get some kind of a court order to request that party to stop until there's a resolution. Now, this is where registering your work becomes necessary. You cannot pursue a court action unless your work is officially registered. So if you haven't registered your work previously, now you have to file that application, wait until the US Copyright Office processes it and issues you the certificate for the copyright.
Okay.
And that can take anywhere from 2 to 8 months, depending how busy or backlog they are.
Yeah.
Which means, during all that time, this other person can continue kind of making use of your product.
Yeah. So within your contracts, basically, whether you're still just accepting clients for free, so either you're just kind of photographing people, building your portfolio, getting what you need to be able to launch, but doing it for free, or you're now an established business and you're accepting money at this point. So make sure that within your contracts, you lay out your copyright terms.
Oh, 100%. It's going to be in your terms of use. And some businesses even elect to have, aside from terms of use, they also elect to have like a separate mini policy just for intellectual property rights. If you're a photographer, or if you're, let's say, a writer, that makes more sense. Like if you're like a blogger, not so much. You can still do it, but it might not be the best use of your time. Including that in your terms of use will be more than enough. But photography, I would say definitely consider having like a whole separate mini policy just on intellectual property rights.
Okay, great. And now, so we're at the point that we have gotten any permits and business kind of documents that we need. We have registered or we have figured out what kind of business, whether it's a sole proprietorship, LLC, or corporation. Is there anything else beyond that for my starter audience and what we recommended for insurance wise that there is legally that you need to then start accepting payments from clients?
So opening separate bank account under your business name. Okay? So regardless what kind of business structure you have, whether you're sole proprietorship, LLC, corporation, a very good practice, like a rule of thumb to follow, would be to always keep your business account separate from your personal checking or savings account. In other words, the money that you get from your services as a photographer should go into that separate account. This also helps you for tax purposes. It's easier to keep track of accounting issues. It also acts as a mini buffer later on against liability, because you can say like, I clearly separated my assets. Here is like what the business like made. This is my personal stuff. And I'm not saying that this is going to work 100% of the time, but it's definitely a factor that works for you rather than against you.
Sure.
So definitely consider opening a separate bank account under your business's name, and always make sure you differentiate between the funds for your business and your household.
Okay, great. Well, you have an awesome freebie for my audience as well. Can you give us a little teaser on what that is?
Sure. I'm looking at my screen right now. Let me open that up really quickly. 1 second. So it's essentially a cheat sheet checklist that I put together for complete newbies to figure out what they need to do. It's doesn't have all the details that you need. It's just a rundown of the steps. If you're wondering, okay, what do I do next? What do I do next? Like that's what it's for. How do you want to screen share? Do you want to actually see it, or do you want me to tell you about it?
I think you guys just give me a little teaser about it. We'll let people be able to sign up through a link that I'll provide with this video, and then they can access it, download it, and start using it to really legally launch their business.
Sure. So it has some of the things we've already talked about, such as, figuring out your business structure. And also, it talks about things such as figure out your business offer, right? Not all businesses are made equal, and they're definitely not the same. As a photographer, you have a service and you have product.
Right.
So technically you would be considered a hybrid business model. And it talks about like creating a business plan for your business. Like it talks about all these different contracts and policies that you might consider having. Huh?
It
Yeah.
sounds juicy. It sounds like it's got everything that we
It's an
need.
8-page, 8-page cheat sheet.
Yeah.
There are some recommendations where you can get different products. Some of them are my links as a disclaimer.
Nice.
But, it talks about a lot of what you need. And then I do have a contact information there for
Okay,
me.
great. That was my next question.
Yeah. You can reach out to me if you want to ask me a question. And I do have a service that I offer to online creatives. It's a website legal audit that you want to make sure your website for your business is legally compliant,
Okay.
whether it's going to be like GDPR issues, whether like privacy data collection issues or anything out there. I offer like super affordable audits, and you can book me, and the link is there also for you if you want to do
wonderful.
that. So the checklist is just a very helpful kind of reference guide almost for them to kind of refer back to and say, oh, like I did this, what should I do next? And it's there.
Yes. I love step by step, like our heads are so overwhelmed with all of the tasks that we need to do every day. And when you have something that you can literally look at and check off as you go and know you've got yourself covered, it's just so much easier to know that you've set yourself up right.
Definitely. And I mean, creating a business is not an easy thing to do. Like it's a lot of time, it's a lot of responsibility, a lot of coffee.
Yeah. Right. But is it worth it? Right. I mean, I just couldn't imagine a life sitting behind a cubicle every day, doing the same Groundhog Day over and over again. And I know that being an entrepreneur and a mom entrepreneur, it's a way for me to still have a piece of me, be there for my family, bring in the revenue that I deserve on my own terms. And it's worth every single bit of hard work that you put into it.
Definitely. I'm not disagreeing with you on that.
Yeah, no, definitely. Well, thank you so much, Mariam. I'm so excited to have you join us today. Give my audience some insight on making sure that they're really considering all aspects of their business. And I'm really excited to link to this freebie as well as your copyright posts that you have for us, because I know a lot of photographers are always concerned with that piece. It's like one of our biggest kind of issues.
It is. As a photographer, it's kind of your bread and butter.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Well, thanks so much again for joining me today. And I will be sure to post all the info. And I know that my audience will be probably reaching out to you.
Thank you so much for this opportunity, Michelle. I loved it. Bye, everybody.